For the time we have together on this occasion, I'd like to talk about discovery, doubt, and determination. Now, determination can be either negative or positive. Perhaps in this particular chapter, or these two chapters, it could be both. I want to talk about the events that unfold in Numbers chapter 13 and chapter 14. It begins this way in chapter 13. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. From each tribe of their fathers you shall send a man, every one a leader among them." 12 individuals, one from each tribe. Now, if you're a student of the Bible, you recognize the name Joshua and Caleb as two of those spies. Without looking, can you name the other 10? And if not, why is that the case? Ultimately, as the story unfolds, that's really actually obvious. Down in verse number 17, you find the instructions that Moses gives to these 12 individuals that are going to be taking a look at that land. Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan and said to them, "Go up this way into the south and go up into the mountains. See what the land is like, whether the people who dwell in it are strong or weak, few or many. Whether the land they dwell in is good or bad, whether the cities they inhabit are like camps or strongholds. Whether the land is rich or poor, whether there are forests or there are not. Be of good courage. Bring back some of the fruit of the land." And then the observation is made. Now the time was the season of the first ripe grapes. So in verse 21, they went up and spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin as far as Rehob, near the entrance of Hamath. And it talks about all the areas and where they go. In verse number 27, when they finally return, they come back and say, "We went into the land where you sent us. It truly flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit." Confirmation that everything that God had said was true. And confirmation is something that's actually demonstrated. Beginning in verse 23, it talks about where they came, where there were a lot of grapes. They took one cluster of grapes, carried it between two of them on a pole, brought some of the pomegranates and figs. They returned from spying out the land after 40 days. They came back to the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land, verse 26. Confirmation, as far as what they're saying, this is what we saw. Demonstration of the fruit of that land, how lush and green those areas seem to be. And in verse 28 and 29, there is an acknowledgement of some challenges that they'll face. There's the way it reads. "Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites dwell in the mountains. The Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the banks of the Jordan." This may be difficult. Challenge is something that is seemingly at every turn. So how do we actually fight against the mass of humanity we find in these tribal states that we've seen in this land? You acknowledge the challenges, but what do you do from that point on? The statement is made in verse number 30. "Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, 'Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it.'" That kind of decisiveness in a very positive way. We saw a lot of things, and there are challenges that we will face if we actually conquer this land. But it's a land that God promised to our forefathers. And God has not let us down as of yet in any way whatsoever. Look at what he did to bring us out of the land of Egypt. We can go up at once and take possession. We are well able to overcome it. And then beginning in verse 31 of chapter 13, going all the way down through verse number 10 of chapter 14, there's a problem. Here's the way it starts. Verse 31, "The men who had gone up with Caleb said, 'We are not able to go up against the people. They're stronger than we.' They gave the children of Israel bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, 'The land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature.'" In fact, the statement is made, verse 33, "We're like grasshoppers in their sight." So how's the nation respond? Verse 1 of chapter 14. "All the congregation lifted up their voices and cried. The people wept that night. All the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, "If only we had died in the land of Egypt, or if only we had died in this wilderness. Why has the Lord brought us to this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and children should become victims? Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt?" And they said to one another, "Let us select a leader and return to Egypt." Enthusiasm and the prospect of receiving the inheritance promised to their forefathers is something that vanishes in an instant. It's as though the grieving process is something that knows no limits. The grief is there because of their unbelief. How soon have they forgotten why they are even where they are at that point in time? It wasn't long ago that they actually were slaves to the Egyptians. Now they are a free nation. But freedom brings responsibilities. Freedom brings challenges. And if people turn back at any sign of an obstacle, disaster is something that will ensue, maybe in a variety of forms. But this particular situation, the discovery, this land is everything that we thought it would be. But look at the people that live there already. Decisiveness, Caleb, we'll find later in chapter 14, Joshua as well, saying, we can do this. God has been with us. We can do this. Doubt, been better if we just stayed in Egypt and died there. Let's choose a leader. Let's cast Moses and Aaron aside. Let's choose a leader to take us back to bondage, take us back to slavery. Let's go back to Egypt. Doubt, decisiveness, along with discovery, some positives, some horrendous negatives. But that's just the first half of the story. Next time, we'll talk about the way this story ends. Please stay safe. We'll talk again soon.